Good morning, class. Today we are going to learn about Jainism and Buddhism. Now, in the previous chapter, you saw that how during the later Vedic age, that is, religion became more complicated. There were class divisions where people were not allowed to change their caste. If you were born into a particular caste, till the time you died, you belonged to that caste only. Now, when we talk about sacrifices and rituals, that also became very complicated, and it became difficult for the normal man or the masses to keep up with the demands of the Brahmins. Then there were new doctrines also, where the Brahmins were responsible for bringing about many innovations and evolving new doctrines. Now, more emphasis was laid on penance. So, in a nutshell, children, people who could not afford to keep up with the expensive rites and rituals which the Brahmin wanted them to, they were very disappointed. They were looking for a religion, for an alternate religion, which was simple and easier for them to understand. Now, when we come to the 6th century BC, right? Now, please open up to page number 29, Jainism and Buddhism. When we come to the 6th century BC, the Aryan settlements, they expanded towards the east. And this was followed by rapid, that is very fast, social and economical and political changes. Up till now, people were nomads. They were roaming from one place to the other in search of food and water. But then they started to settle down at places. Society, now please underline, in the 6th century BC, the Aryan settlements expanded to the east, accompanied by rapid socio-economic and political changes. Society at some places had traits of tribal political organization, where a particular tribe, people following set traditions, speaking a particular language, having a particular habits, they formed a tribe. And they were in turn led by a strong person who was their leader. Now, materialism and spiritualism, they both existed side by side. It stands true for all generation that materialism, when we are looking about for our general needs, to satisfy our body and then to satisfy our soul and mind as well. Now, the people, underline, materialism and spiritualism both existed side by side. The people in the later Vedic age began to use implements and tools made of iron. The iron tools enabled them to clear forests, bring more land under cultivation, and lead a settled life. Now, when this happened, it led to surplus production of food grains. Now, when people see, children, it is very simple. When people had enough to eat, they were not worried about working for what they were going to eat during the day or at the end of the day. Then they put their mind to other activities as well. Let us see what happens. The surplus produce could be utilized by the kings to meet their military and administrative needs. It could also be used by the people in the towns who specialized in various arts and crafts. All these advantages enable the people to lead a settled life and to expand further in neighboring areas. Now, when we talk about expansion, when we are expanding, we will be encroaching on other people's territory, which will result in wars. Underline, this expansion resulted in wars between different tribes. In these wars, the larger and more powerful tribes defeated the smaller ones and expanded their territory and created large kingdoms. These kingdoms were called Janpads. A number of Janpads joined together to form bigger and more powerful independent kingdoms called Mahajanpads. Please underline both the things. Now, in the 6th century BC, it is regarded as an important epoch. Epoch is period of the time that is very important in history. Emergence of thinkers like Zarathustra or Zoroaster in Persia, Confucius in China, and Mahavir and Gautam Buddha, among many others in India. In India, that is in the 6th century, it was a period when orthodox is more traditional, religious beliefs and practices were challenged and even rejected by the new sects. Of these sects, Jainism and Buddhism emerged as the most influential or potent religious reform movements. Now, going back to the later Vedic age, we talked about how difficult, how complicated and expensive things had become for the general masses. So they were already on the lookout for something which was more simple and which will satisfy the soul, the thirst of their soul, looking for God, who wanted to satisfy the higher being. Now let us look at the sources which tell us about the spread. First of all, the rise and then the spread of Jainism and Buddhism. The three important sources which provide information about Jainism and Buddhism are the following. Please underline. First is Angas. Jain scriptures are popularly known as Agams, that is, what comes out from the mouth of the Lord. It is generally accepted that whenever Lord Mahavira taught after gaining omniscience is state of being, and being everywhere, was compiled by his disciples in 12 parts called Angas. Sanskrit word for part. Now these Angas are collectively known as Dvadshanki. So please underline the entire thing. You can see it in your video also. The foremost of these Angas is Acharya Sutra, Acharang Sutra. Another well-known Ang is the Vyakya Pragnapati, which is more popularly known as Bhagavati Sutra. While the former deals with the code of conduct which a Jain monk is required to follow, the latter expounds or explains the Jain doctrines in a comprehensive manner. Based on these Angas, the seers also compiled 12 auxiliary works that came to be known as Upangs. Now, when we were learning about Upanishad Veds, we learned that Upanishads were written after the Veds. They were in a way a commentary on the Veds to simplify the Veds. It is said that these Angas and Upangs were not written for a long time. They were orally passed by the religious leaders to their pupils. Now, according to famous historian R.C. Majumdar, towards the close of the 4th century BC, a famine in South Bihar led to the exodus. Exodus means migration of people on a large scale of an important section of Jains headed by Bhadrabahu to South India. Those that remained behind in Patliputra called for a council in order to revive the knowledge of the Angas. The result was the compilation of the 12 Angas. At another council held at Vallabhi in Gujarat in the 5th or 6th century AD, a final collection of the scriptures was made for the first time in Ardh Magadhi Prakrit language. Now, Veds, were all written in Sanskrit. Therefore, they were out of bounds, or out of bounds here meaning to say that the general people who were not educated could not understand what was written, and they had to rely on the Brahmins to translate it to them. Now, these discourses, written, compiled in Prakrit, made it simpler or easier for the general masses to understand what religion was all about and how to attain salvation and how to follow God. The Angas are regarded as the most important part of the Jain doctrines. They discuss religious rites, stages of a householder's life, the vows of chastity, rules of conduct, and other features of Jain philosophy. In a manner, all these 12 Angas, they were dealing with the life, how a particular sect was to lead their life. Now, the second is the Tripitakas. Underline, Tripitakas are the most important literary works of the Buddhists. The word Tripitaka means 3 baskets of Buddhist canon. Canon, over here standing for, it is a loosely defined list of Buddhist texts recognized by the different councils. The earliest writings of these texts were taken on long, narrow leaves, sewn together on one side and bound in bunches, then stored in baskets. Therefore, they were called the 3 baskets. These works written in Pali language include the following: the Vinaya Pitaka, which deals with the rules and regulations which Buddha promulgated, that is, to make known for the monks and the nuns. It also gives an account of the life and teachings of Buddha, as well as some important aspects of ancient Indian history, customs and arts of the period. Not just it talks about Buddha, but the customs prevalent, the history, how things were at that period, and art also was mentioned in the Vinaya Pitaka. Then we come to the Sutta Pitaka, comprises the discourses of Buddha on various occasions. It also had discourses by some of the disciples of Buddha, such as Sariput, Anand and others. The Dhampat, or the way of truth, is an important component. What is that? The feature of this Pitaka, which comprises Buddha's teachings. Now, the Abhidhamma Pitaka deals with Buddhist philosophy. It describes things like the working of the human mind and the state of matter. Besides being the most reliable source of information about Buddhist religion and philosophy, the three Pitakas provide a glimpse of the social, economic and political life in the age of Buddha. Not just, see, when we talked about Vinaya Pitaka, it along with the life and teachings of Buddha, it also talked about the aspects of ancient Indian history, customs and arts. Now when we come to Sutta Pitaka, it only talks about the social conditions, the economic practices, the trades and business and political life only during the life of Buddha. Then we come to the Jatak tales. Jataks refer to the tales which describe the previous births of Buddha in both human and animal form. Each tale begins by noting the occasion that prompted its telling and ends with the Buddha identifying the lives of the people in the introductory story with such people from the past. The future Buddha may appear in them as a king, an outcast, a god, or an elephant, but in whatever form, he exhibits some virtue, some attribute, some quality that the tale thereby highlights. They also have a moral to tell. Many Jatak tales have parallels in the Mahabharata and elsewhere in non-Buddhist literature. Such stories have been mentioned in Mahabharata, elsewhere in other non-Buddhist literature all across the world. The Jatak stories have also been illustrated frequently in sculpture and paintings throughout the Buddhist world. According to A.K. Water, the Jataks are the precursors, that come before to the various legendary biographies of the Buddha, which were composed at later dates. Although many Jataks were written from an early period, which describes previous lives of the Buddha, very little biographical material about Gautam's own life has been recorded. However, the Jataks throw significant light on the political, economic and social conditions of people from the 5th to the 2nd century BC. They also reflect Buddhist morals, ethics and principles. Morals and ethics being the same thing, basically they deal with the same thing, that is our values. Now children, after going through this, if there is anything which you have not understood, then please note it down in either in your textbook or in your school diary, and when the school reopens, you will ask me to explain it to you. Thank you.